Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Eric Larson Day. It's Saturday, so we're looking at the next issue of the Savage Dragon that I have in my collection. This is issue number 39, cover dated June 1997. Looking at this cover gives you a good idea of what you're in for this issue. If you know this character, his name is Dung. If you know about him, you know what's coming out of his hands here. The fact that it's brown should really clue you in, and the extra little hint is all these flies kind of flying around here. So yeah, this is an issue that is going to be pretty much soaked in poop all the way throughout. Pretty cool cover, lots of good layering here. You know, the hands and the arm in the foreground, the head in the middle ground, and our character Dung in the background, creating those three basic planes. These little flies all around, you know, driving home the point that this is just a bunch of crap, literally. And just a nice little art detail here using the zipatone or something with the straight parallel lines on the fin here. I think it works really well. Let's have a look inside. All right, credits for this one. Eric Larson, creator, writer, penciler, inker. Chris Eliopoulos, letterer. Janie Wong, English, Chinese translation, lettering. I believe that's Eric Larson's wife, right? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's who that is. iHawk are doing the colors. And so looking at this first splash page here, we're back with the kind of secondary storyline between, I think his name is William, and Rita Metermaid. She's looking out the window, and he's pointing out, he says, "You're thinking about Dragon again, aren't you?" Very insecure character in this relationship, where Rita Metermaid was very insecure with Dragon. Now it's him who's insecure with her, right? And she says, yes, she is thinking about the Dragon. He's being all insecure about it. And kind of a funny thing where she says, I was just thinking about all the crap he's going through right now. He's talking about, you know, sleeping with the Dragon, and she's thinking about that and how can I compare? And she was obviously thinking about something else here. So he's like, oh, okay. Well, you know, and again, he says it himself, kind of what we're thinking. I'm pathetic, so insecure. Man, I'm a wreck. Yeah, that's basically what Larson's trying to get across, and it's pretty obvious. I will say this, you know, I've talked about how Eric Larson, I feel like, works in some of his sexual fetishes into the story, maybe not so obviously early on in the series, but more as it moves ahead. I've seen recent issues, more modern issues, where there's, you know, some pretty racy stuff. Again, not that I'm offended by that or anything. I just find it funny that he works that stuff into his stories. The nipple, I'll call it Nipplegate, but the fact that he was very descriptive in drawing the nipples, he's kind of dropped that here. We still get a bit of nipple profile, but, you know, you would think with a character like Rita Metermaid, who's got, you know, she's definitely packing the heavies, he's kind of dropped that whole nipple defining bit of his artwork. So I don't know why. But then again, working in some kinks here, which, you know, I don't know if this is somehow a representation of his wife, you know, if that's what he meant it to be here. But basically, Frank walks into Dragon being massaged by a Chinese girl who's topless, walking on his back. So who knows how far that went. And, you know, as Frank says, you know, he sees Dragon talking with her. So you speak Chinese. You know, recently this has become common knowledge, but back in the late 90s, not quite sure how many people knew this, that there's no actual Chinese language. There's either Mandarin or Cantonese, right? But Larson, being married to someone of Chinese origin, would know that and definitely worked it into the story here. So you can learn stuff from comics, right? Pretty good shot here. We see that some time has passed because Dragon's grown a goatee here. I like how Larson would change his look up every once in a while. I remember when the regular series started with issue 1, he kind of had the handlebar mustache. So this is kind of a variation of that, I guess. And basically Dragon's explaining that even though he can't remember his past, he's realizing that there's things he knows and he doesn't exactly know why. So he's like, I always knew it, when he talks about Mandarin, Cantonese, several other languages too, 100 or so, maybe more. I haven't kept count. I've been doing some reading and it's brought up some stuff I've always known, but I haven't really had any use for in the last 5 years. And he reminds him that he's on administrative leave, which is kind of an important plot point here. Dragon's kind of been sidelined by the police department, by the new chief, who's in cahoots with Horde, which we found out a few issues ago, but not everyone knows yet. And of course, keeping them off the streets is going to allow the Vicious Circle to be able to go, you know, keep up their activities without too much interference from the police department, right? I guess that's kind of the goal here. And just a funny little shot of her saying something, and he says, you said it. I guess someone who speaks Mandarin would know what this says. I obviously don't, and I'm not quite sure how I'd go and translate that to find out. But there you go. Move over to Horde, again, who's kind of taking control of the leadership of the Vicious Circle. We know how, right? He's got these little worms that he can mind control people with. Always love the depiction of Horde and all the interesting textures he throws in there, whether it's the depiction of the worms, a bit of screen tone here, dirty screen tone, and the eyes that always kind of, reverberate light, and, probably inked in here, and then some white medium added to that all around. Kind of a sun effect, right? Which I think works really well. And we get kind of a quiet moment. Dragon just kind of chilling at the bar, drowning his sorrows in a beer. Alex comes up and is there with Peter Clapton's bodyguard, who was actually the guy who was playing Star for Peter Clapton, and basically tells the dragon, I'm not doing that anymore, because the dragon had told him to stop. As he was not an official member of the police force, he was more of a vigilante, I guess. And he lets him know that that first girl that Dragon and Star saved in the very, very first issue of the miniseries is basically hooked up with the guy who writes the songs for Peter Clapton. So Dragon kind of resumes it here. Amanda went after Clapton because he tricked her into thinking he was Star, and then he saved her life. Then she goes and marries the real genius behind his music. So kind of a twisted story there. Maybe that'll probably come into play a little later in future issues. As I've said, Larson's a master at throwing out subplots that come back later on to become kind of the main story. So we'll see if that pans out. And there you go. That's pretty much what goes on here in that scene. And now we're back to the Vicious Circle. Love this background. Man, I don't know how long it took to draw that. I'm wondering if there's a bit of statting going on there or copying, but I don't think so. I feel like that's all hand drawn, very evocative, looks very cool, great background. And it's of course Horde here talking to his Vicious Circle lackeys. We've got Cadaver here, which I thought was a really cool design, maybe inspired a little bit by Mignola and Mignola's style, but this definitely cinches it that it is an Eric Larson character as he's continuing on in the series past the Hellboy appearance. So Horde is our master, do not question his way, is what this character says. And then we've got Powerhouse here, or Chicken, what do they call him? Chicken Man. But you were just, and he's realizing mind control. He's realized that they're all zombies, right, is what he says here. Get away from me. And of course, Horde, resistance is futile. Chicken Man sees him, so they want him to become mind controlled as well. So you see the little worm kind of slithering up his cape here. And boom, I love this shot because it's so funny to me that, yeah, chicken eating bugs and worms, just makes total sense. So he's able to turn his head and, just like a chicken, I guess, almost 180 degrees and bite the worm in his mouth here. You're Mighty Man's foe from the 40s, the Wicked Worm. What have you done to the Vicious Circle? Curses, that should be obvious, Birdman. We've assumed command, and please, no cracks about the early bird getting the worm. So this is basically a play on, I think his name is Mr. Mind, and he was a Captain Marvel Shazam villain in the late 30s, early 40s. And of course, Mighty Man is basically kind of a stand-in for Captain Marvel Shazam in the Savage Dragon universe, right? So that's definitely where he's getting the inspiration for this stuff, twisting it a little bit in that Larson fashion, right? Again, look at that arm. I love the way he depicts the worms and the texture of Horde's arm. I think it looks great here. I mean, all of his characters, when there's texture to be had, just tend to have great textures. This rock-like guy here, this guy almost has more like a lizardy kind of texture to his body. I love all that stuff. This is kind of a weird sequence as far as Dragon goes, and whether or not he's a good or a bad guy, at least morally, I guess, when it comes to the women and sex and stuff, because so he's walking with this girl. Hold on there, Susie. Oh boy, beer affected me more than I thought. So she's pretty drunk, basically. Don't you worry, little lady. You're in good hands. I'll see to it that you get a nice comfortable bed. You'll feel a lot better when you're off your feet and on your back. You've got my personal guarantee on that one. So, lots been said about consent in the last few decades, and if a drunk girl is consenting and this and that. Just seems kind of odd that the dragon would, in this case, kind of take advantage of the fact that the girl's drunk to get her on her back, as he says. And this kind of shot of him kind of slyly, evilly smiling about it just makes me feel a little bit weird about the dragon here. I don't know if there's a plot reason for that or something later that'll come up that'll, relate to this. Just an odd little moment, I think, here with the Savage Dragon and his drunk date. And kind of funny because it says, "Ooh, I feel like crap." She does. And then, you know, kind of an Alan Moore thing where you turn the page, boom, to the reveal of lots and lots of crap flying around. And we know, of course, from the cover that is our friend Dung, who's shown up and is basically, it's pretty gross, filling up the whole apartment, or at least the hallway here, full of shit, basically, right? And, you know, the flies and bloop and the sounds and stuff kind of definitely reinforce the fact that this is just a huge pile of shit. And the way he texturizes the dragon and her there, kind of surprised no one pukes. If she was drunk up to that point, as we saw earlier, I feel like she would end up puking, being kind of thrown into a pool of shit. So pretty gross, great textures. And we get this reoccurring character once again called what is it? Chaos and Control, or Control and Chaos, one or the other. Once again, attacking the Savage Dragon. So Savage Dragon, it's become a trope now, pretty much since the first few issues. That, you know, Savage Dragon brings a girl home, and somehow, you know, they find the Vicious Circle, or members of the Vicious Circle find him and attack him. Right? It's starting to get a little bit redundant, to be honest, story wise here. We get a She Dragon pinup by Dave Johnson. Let's have a look. So her older look, and now her kind of more Finn-like mohawk look down here. Dave Johnson, great artist, does a great job here. Got nothing to say about it other than looks pretty darn good. I do appreciate the fact that Larson has kept up this thing of having different artists do pinups every issue of Savage Dragon. It's a fun little thing to see that poster in the middle. And of course, you know, he always adds something not story related to the back side of it and to the front side of it, so that if you so wish, you can pull that out, put that on your wall, and you're not losing any story pages or story elements. Great shot of Dart. Kind of funny. Her darts end up looking like little penises here. Maybe that's just me. So the fight ensues. Again, a good example of all the different textures he works in there. Texture for the poop, all the metallic texture on Dung here. The kind of more lizardy, monstery texture on Chaos and Control. Larson is a master at that. He's got the Ninja Turtle knee pads, and also, you know, basically a bunch of mechanical anuses at the end of his hand, right, that throw the poop out. So Dung, I'm not quite sure how he's able to produce so much of this poop, but I guess he's an overeater or something. It's not really ever explained, right? Great shot of Dragon, once again, covered in poop. And I mean, that's pretty much going to be most of my comments throughout, because the rest of the issue is just basically Dragon trying to save this lady here and fighting these Vicious Circle guys in a pile of poop. Artwork, as usual, as I said, is stellar. You know, of all the Kirby kind of heir apparents, Larson's definitely one of the better ones. You know, there's Walt Simonson, there's him. Tom Scioli's a little more recent. He's been around for a while now too. But I definitely think Larson's channeling the Kirby, not quite copying it, but working it into his style, and making it even more evocative, certainly with shots like this, right? So kind of a fun sequence where Dragon takes one of Dung's arms and shoves it down, I guess this is Chaos's mouth, and just blasts him with some poop. So I don't know exactly how far that goes. Does his head actually explode here? It sure seems like, right? Pieces of it flying all the way around. So I guess his head has been broken apart and blown wide open by a shit bomb, basically. And just in time for Dragon to turn around and realize that his date is gone. So much for seeing any action tonight. So pretty one-track mind there for Dragon. You know, I guess he's figuring after being covered in poop and having been drunk, this girl would just be down to take a shower and then get down with him. Again, that side of Dragon I find is a little weird in this issue. I've never really seen him, you know, I guess acting that way towards the opposite sex. You know, he's always been very lucky and getting laid a lot, but in this one here, he seems pretty insistent that he wanted to get laid that night, and that's not going to happen. So I feel like this will be kind of a turning point for the Dragon, as this page depicts him officially kind of like leaving the police force, right? Saying bye to Alex and everyone else, to Frank. And as he's just left and he's gone, the chief of police, the new one, right, controlled by Horde, comes out and says someone's going to be filling the Dragon's shoes, and it's going to be the She-Dragon, right? So I guess we'll have to look at next issue to see the fallout of all that there. and what that entails for the Savage Dragon himself as well, moving into the future in the next few issues. Got the long letter page sequence. Headhunters number 3, if I remember correctly, there was an ad a few issues ago in color. This is by Chris Marinan. The ad is not in color here, probably cheaper, and again, past the comics bubble bursting there in the early mid-90s. You know, comics are getting harder and harder to sell. Ads are probably getting more and more expensive. Colored ads are more expensive than black and white, so that's probably why you get this here. And this was a weird one because I've never, the Savage Dragon Sex and Violence number 1. I don't know if I've ever seen this. I don't know who the artist is. I just find it weird that there's no credits as to who's actually working on that story. The art looks decent enough. If anyone knows anything about it, let me know here. I'm not even sure if this actually came out. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, I've never seen this before. Interesting. Some of the interesting thing about going through these old comics and doing these reviews is, again, spotting things that I didn't spot back in the day. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what's up with this. All right, guys, there you go. That is my review of the Savage Dragon issue number 39. If you're still watching and you're still subscribed, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. Really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comics. Also helps us along the road to hitting 500 subscribers. That is the point at which YouTube actually recognizes us as a real channel and starts helping us out a little bit with the algorithm and getting us out there to other people as well. So thank you so much for watching. Get your friends to check it out and have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages. Cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby. Like! Subscribe!